The US population is 334 million people. 260 million of those are white. That's 78% of the population. Before colonization, there was an estimated 15 million Native Americans on Turtle Island. That figure is now 7 million. 400,000 people were forcibly brought to America during the transatlantic slave trade. Their descendants now number over 48 million. Firstly, the Americans, the real Americans, the Native Americans, were genocide at the same scale as the Irish were during the famine. Same scale, half the population gone, 15 down to 7. In Ireland it was 8 down to 4. White people, settlers, colonizers became the dominant population in America. Native people were nearly eradicated, confined to reservations, reduced and isolated and forced into very strange boarding schools that required their own video. The white people who left Britain to go to America were not okay, and the things that they did to the people that they found there were not okay. The majority of these white settlers arrived between the 17th and the 20th century. This was not a population surge, but a strategically backed intentional settler colonial project encouraged by private capital. The US government offered not only citizenship but land to European settlers that went out there. White population growth outpaces these other groups, not just because white people had more babies, but because they had higher survival rates, still do, higher access to healthcare, education, money off the land, while enforced segregation made sure that the same quality of life could not be afforded to black or brown people or natives. What happened to the Native Americans meets the UN Convention on Genocide standards. Settler colonialism doesn't rely on just killing everybody. It's replacement theory. The settler state depends on the ongoing reproduction of the settler class, and the white, nuclear, perfect little American family with their picket fence is a core mechanism of American government state power maintenance. This video is addressed at liberal white American women who read about social justice, donate to causes, march for Palestine, but you still imagine that having children is just a personal decision. That's private between you and your partner. To reproduce whiteness in this country is to participate in genocide. You are repeating it, not through violence, but through inheritance. You cannot separate your fertility from the system that holds it. Refusal is the first ethical act. Refuse to reproduce the settler fantasy. Refuse to keep passing the same power forward. You have to stop pretending that your family is neutral. You have to stop pretending that your child is just your child. In this system, your child is a carrier of settler legacy, a beneficiary of violence, unless you choose to make them something else. That choice sits with you, and it's do or die. Stop pretending that white America is normal, or that this life is innocent. The population structure of the United States today is built atop destroyed nations, stolen children, sterilized women, and a legal system designed to protect the white family, to continue unconsidered, unexamined reproduction in that system is not passive. You are actively participating in colonialism. Reproductive refusal is a form of ethical resistance to late-stage capitalism. But this is not a call to antinatalism. It is a call to break the cycle of reproduction as erasure. Many settler descendants seek spiritual meaning, whether through God or otherwise, without acknowledging or confronting the material structures that you live inside. Without truth, reflection, repentance, restitution, your spiritual claims are empty. Continuing in 2025 to just do the suburban thing while ignoring genocide is not morally neutral. You're participating in systemic violence. This is not a blanket condemnation to motherhood or a denial of your worthiness to real human love and care. I am asking you to confront the reality that white liberalism is decoration for the most oppressive system the world has ever seen. And it is white liberal women.
For many centuries, white population in Europe and North America maintained high levels of growth because they benefited from powerful structural advantages. This includes access to wealth. This includes land ownership, strong healthcare, and economic stability. These benefits systematically were denied to blacks and brown population. Understand that these advantages meant lower infant mortality, better living conditions, and broader family security. However, the modern era flipped many of these conditions, leading to economic pressure, high costs of living, shifting social norms, and um, economic pressures, which shifted social norms, urbanization, and delayed family formation, which have dramatically reduced birth rates among white populations, particularly in Western countries. Right. This demographic transition is not unique to white people. It is a common in highly developed society, but it is most politically sensitive among white populations because of their historical dominance. And we see that these economic shifts are making white population reduce because, and see this, I think this is logical because get to understand that during the time of those periods of segregation, there are a couple of advantages, and let's talk about the black genocide. What happened to the black population and the conditions that black people were put after everything that they went through makes you understand that the white population and the black population could not be compared, because when you try to see the number of African who were brought in as slaves, you understand that these people had a higher place also when it comes to population because they got all these facilities that black people are not getting. But you understand as time went by after the abolition of slavery and everything and things changed, you understood that black population started growing, right? And you understand some part of biology. And this part of biology was that there was this afraid. I'll call it eugenics. Yes, they came up with what we called eugenics, and this in eugenics, it taught them that the white characters, I mean the white genes, were so much better than the black genes because that's what it taught them, and so they avoided intermarriages between white and black people, and there were so many negative consequences that was towards women who married or who interbred with black men because they feared all this mixing that will make them go extinct. And so when you understand that concept, it tells you that these are a group of people that they knew very well that it was inevitable that one day the population will go down, and so they wanted to preserve whiteness, right? And so there's so many formats and so many ways they have always tried to preserve their whiteness. They preserve their whiteness through fear. That's one thing, right? So the fear of losing whiteness has made them do certain things that they don't want to do. And so, brothers and sisters, I'm going to let the video roll. I'm going to let the clip roll, and then I'll be giving my, 2 cents in regards to this. I hope this video helps you understand all these geopolitical, geographical changes that are happening in the United States today. And I hope you all get to learn from it. So brothers and sisters, I'm your number one presenter and host, Strategic Stories. Let's watch the video. I'll be back, and then I'll be giving my thoughts in regards to this. So let's keep watching. I'll be back.
You ever wonder why less than 15% of the world's population feels the need to control 100% of the narrative? Because when you're a genetic outlier, born from a recessive mutation with a ticking clock on your DNA, you have to lie to survive. Let's get into it. Modern Europeans carry between 2 to 4% Neanderthal DNA. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's confirmed by peer-reviewed journals like Nature, Science Advances, and Cell. The Neanderthals were not some mystical master race. They were cold-adapted hominins who lived in caves, scavenged for food, and operated in small, isolated groups. They weren't the future. They were a failed branch of the human tree. And those Neanderthal traits still show up in their descendants. Lower sociability, higher aggression, light skin and light eyes, red or straight hair, high pain tolerance, shorter limb ratios, and a disconnection from nature's rhythms. They weren't creators. They weren't builders. They were survivors of harsh, sun-starved environments until they weren't. They died out. Not because they were killed off, but because their own epigenetic behavior, their limited fertility, isolationist tendencies, and lack of social cohesion couldn't sustain their species. Their extinction is a warning, not a blueprint. So how did they live on? Through interbreeding with Homo sapiens. And that's where modern Europeans come in. The Neanderthal ghost genome lives inside them today. And ironically, that same genetic signature they carry is the very thing they now weaponize to claim superiority. But here's where it gets deeper. Even some East Africans, like Ethiopians, show slightly elevated Neanderthal DNA. Not because they interbred directly with Neanderthals, but because of Eurasian backflow. Invaders from the north came back down into Africa, carrying their DNA, trauma, and mutations with them. And even then, their percentage is far lower than what you see in white Europeans. Sub-Saharan Africans, Indigenous Americans, and Melanesians, their levels of Neanderthal DNA are negligible to non-existent. Because the most melanated peoples of Earth didn't need to survive the ice by digging holes. They were already thriving in cosmic alignment with Earth, Sun, and Spirit. And speaking of alignment, let's talk skin. The light skin mutation in modern humans is recent, very recent. Studies from University College London show that the SLC24A5 and SLC45A2 gene variants responsible for pale skin didn't even exist until about 6,000 years ago. Before that, even in Europe, the original populations had dark skin, dark eyes, and curly hair. In fact, Cheddar Man, a 10,000-year-old skeleton found in England, had very dark skin and blue eyes. Let that sink in. Whiteness did not exist when the first civilizations were rising, which means the founders of Kemet, not white. The builders of Sumer, not white. The mound builders of Cahokia, not white. The creators of the Indus Valley, China's Shang dynasty, Olmecs, Inca, and Maya, not white. So when people ask, what did white people build? The answer is simple. They didn't build. They inherited. And when they realized that their numbers were small and their genes recessive, they panicked. Enter eugenics. Let's name names. Francis Galton, the father of eugenics, cousin to Darwin. Charles Davenport, eugenicist who pushed racial hygiene policies in the US. Harry Laughlin, architect of sterilization laws. Ernst Rudin, Nazi eugenics leader supported by American funding. The Rockefeller Foundation and Carnegie Institution, they funded the research, the labs, the policies. They all pushed the lie that white was not only right, but endangered. So they legislated it, sterilized non-white women, separated babies from their parents, and drew bloodlines to try and purify the impure. Why? Because they saw what was coming. You can't keep a mutation alive when the earth is healing. When the sun returns to its cycle, when people of color reconnect with their power, when rhythm, not reason, guides the future. And now they're saying everyone has melanin. Cute. But next time, let's break that down. Because not all melanin is created equal. There's a reason they study eumelanin, neuromelanin, and pheomelanin separately. There's a reason they mine melanin from fetal tissue in animals. There's a reason they patent it, and there's a reason why, despite all their technology, they can't synthesize the real thing. So no, this isn't just science, it's spiritual warfare through biology. And day 7, we're going to talk about why they fear the sun and what it means for the
reducing population growth. That's this big benefit. The key thing you can do to reduce population growth is actually improve health.
In the developed countries, the big winners are countries that have shrinking populations.
I would like to reduce the number of people on the planet because there's too many of us.
When we invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce population, more of our children can breathe clean air and drink clean water.
With too many people. We have global warming because too many people are using too much stuff.
Now, the world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that. We're taking things that are, genetically modified organisms, and we're injecting them in little kids' arms. We just shoot them right into the vein. So in the next 5 to 10 years, for the next pandemic, we'll solve all those problems.
When you say the next pandemic, there will be another pandemic.
Absolutely. We don't know when.
History teaches us that the next pandemic is a matter of when, not if.
We know what's next. We're going to have another major coronavirus pandemic before the end of this decade, before 2030.
If we really want to prevent the next pandemic, and there will be one, there will absolutely be an outbreak of another pandemic. It may be next year.
We need more money to plan for the second pandemic. There's going to be another pandemic. We have to think ahead. We definitively will have to face other surprises, black swans, as they are called, maybe different kinds of viruses.
But also there will be a surprise outbreak.
Most of the work we're going to do to be ready for pandemic 2.
We're undergoing a soft coup, and the idea is to create a whole new set of laws and ignore the existing human rights laws and other laws under the pretext of pandemic preparedness and the biosecurity agenda. The WHO is developing through all its nations, but with the WHO Directorate in the United States in charge, a pandemic treaty and amendments to the existing international health regulations that will remove the human rights protections currently embedded in the IHRs, will enforce surveillance, censorship, get rid of freedom of speech, require governments to censor and only push a single narrative. Also, we will be subject, if they can make this work, to vaccines developed in 100 days.
We are on the brink, if not even at the start, of another global health crisis. And as a medical doctor by training, I'm appalled by the disinformation that threatens global progress on everything.
Okay, I'm gonna call on my fellow white people, especially like white USians and people raised in the white woman box, because that's primarily what we're talking about here. But anybody, I need to know. This says, what do you mean by white communities fall apart so often? I want to hear your stories. Stitch this or comment on if you were in a community of primarily white people that imploded. I want to hear it. Big, small, online, offline, could be anything from abuse from someone at the top to everybody disagreeing on what kind of yarn was best for a project. If you've been in a primarily white space that has imploded and gotten super dramatic, I want to hear about it.
I think white people think that other people want to be them. I think they think other people want to be white. They actually think that people are looking at them ordering Charlie Kirk's at Starbucks in a show of solidarity and thinking, God, I wish that was fucking me. They think people want to be like them. Bro, nobody wants to be like white people.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
In every lifetime, if I ever got reincarnated, I would choose to be black. This video is so funny because it is true. Like, white people think that they are the norm, the status quo, and that they are the blueprint for things, and everything outside of the scope of being white is not normal. I can speak boldly for the majority of black people on earth, and I will say 99.999% of black people. In every lifetime, if I ever got reincarnated, I would choose to be black. With everything that we experience in the world, with everything, all the history we have, all the racism, microaggressions, macroaggressions existing in this world, having to prove yourself, being better than everybody just to get an equal level playing field, I would always choose to be black. I couldn't imagine not having 20 cousins, having fake cousins, being communal, going to church, having growing up in my grandmother's house, having dinner at my grandma's house, having a drunk uncle that has hoop dreams at 50 who used to be a rapper. I couldn't imagine not having all the things that bring me together as a black person with other black people. Seasoned food, rhythm, music, clothes, swag, style, impact. I just could not imagine not being this person. So if you're watching this and you're white and you really think that you are the blueprint because the world has told you so, that's a lie, bro. It's a lie. I would never want to be white. Don't get me wrong. There are some people out there that have issues internally, self-hatred, and that's due to our history in this land and the world. But the majority of us would always choose to be melanated in the next lifetime. Have a wonderful day.
So what exactly is causing the birth rate of white people to decline? Here's why, right? They're trying to make it seem like the reason why the birth decline in a white population is because of money or societal issues. Wrong. It's genetics. White people have the lowest genetic diversity. That means whenever a white person is having sex with another white person, it's like they're inbreeding. It's a micro level of inbreeding. And inbreeding, for people that don't know, it creates fertility issues. So as white people keep having children only inside of their race and they don't branch out to go get some new DNA codes outside of their gene pool, their recessive dwindles down how much genes and genetic codes your children are going to have. And when you're inbreeding too much, it gives you lose the ability to procreate. So now it makes it much more difficult for white people to have children. It takes on average a lot longer. It takes much more tries for a white couple to have children.
White people attempting to rebrand white rage by co-opting the term black fatigue as though it's a phenomenon they actually experience but only recently found the language to talk about is both dystopianly weird and tragically on brand. The copying, the whitewashing, the centering themselves by playing victim. But what's ironically telling about it is that the concept of racial battle fatigue is not new. It's been around for decades, and the term black fatigue has been used by black people for quite a while. Mary Frances Winters wrote a book that came out in 2020 titled Black Fatigue, and it describes the mental, emotional, and physical exhaustion that black people experience because of systemic racism. Now, notice how black people didn't call that white fatigue, because the purpose is not to assign blame in order to justify bad behavior. It is called black fatigue because it is a harm that black people experience, and so their focus is on addressing and combating that harm. Whereas when white people talk about experiencing black fatigue, they are not talking about a harm that they experience because of black people or anybody else. They are literally telling on their own inability to live in society with black people. And that's not new either. That's a pathology that has existed for...
I do not give a fuck if white people go extinct. And the reason why is because I'm not a white supremacist. I don't think that white skin is inherently better because I'm not a fucking idiot. I get so many messages like this, like, oh my god, like, you don't care about the white man, like, white men are so oppressed, and you don't care if we go extinct. I don't care. I don't care. I have dated people of all races. That has never been a factor for me. What is a factor is the person's vibe and personality. Most of the white men that I've encountered have been incredibly repulsive, racist, or disgusting, especially in small towns. It's not important to me to marry a white man to pass on my white genes. If I choose to have children and I have children with somebody with brown or black skin, the kid will still look like me. They will all share all of my same features. So honestly, I would probably be more upset about coffee going extinct than white people. I don't give a fuck. And it's not that I don't like the color of my skin. I love the way I look. I think I'm really cutie and I love my life. I don't take pride in being white. There is a difference between self-love and white supremacy. I'm not a white supremacist.
They're saying that minorities will want to get even with white people once white people become a racial minority here in the United States. Here's the thing that white people don't understand. All non-white people want is to be left alone. So as the white population starts to go down and other populations start to rise, again, non-white communities want to be left alone. It's not about retribution. It's not about vengeance. All of that would have happened a long time ago. It's about leave me alone and let me live my life. But white people have this great fear of what not being in power will mean for them. And who are they? Who am I as a white person if I am not in power, if I am not the oppressor, if I am not the one making all of the rules, and having everyone do things my way? That's the fear.
So, brothers and sisters, if you allow me, let me take you back to those Jim Crow times. I think it's important. During the colonial and industrial eras, white populations expanded rapidly because of the economic systems which were built on extraction, conquest, and free labor from enslaved Africans and colonized people. This system produced wealth that gave white societies reproductive stability. Black and indigenous populations, on the other hand, were systematically destabilized, displaced, or limited in their ability to grow when a group enjoys political, economical, and medical supremacy, population growth comes naturally. But once these systems lose their dominance, the demographic landscape shifts. As world societies become more equal, at least compared to before, white populations lost their structural benefits that had artificially inflated their numbers for centuries. Um, Another major factor is the shift in values within the white majority societies. Remember, as education levels increased, especially among white women, marriage and childbirth were delayed. Higher education correlates strongly with lower birth rates worldwide. White populations have been the earliest to industrialize and modernize, also become the earliest to experience this demographic slowdown. Meanwhile, minorities and immigrants population, often younger and more family-oriented, began to grow as fast as possible. This shows an yield in higher rates in childbirths. This created a perception among white communities that they were being replaced, the great replacement theory, if you understand that, when in reality, they were experiencing the natural consequences of modernization. When you get back to the 21st centuries, the economic pressures of the 21st centuries also hit white populations so much hard. Declining birth rates correlates with rising costs of housing, child, healthcare, and education. All areas where Western economies have become extremely expansive. Younger generations, including white youth, increasingly choose to delay or to avoid having children because of the economic burden is so much overwhelming. Unlike earlier eras where large families were supported by agriculture life or strong welfare states, modern capital pressures discourage childbirth. What appears as a decline of white population is often the decline of affordability, stability, and long-term economic optimism. Optimism, or what we call optimism, right? So, come think about it in this way. White people add structures, they add systems that help them have whatever they have or whatever they had. But black people didn't have this. Minority groups didn't have this. They learned to survive with the little that they have. Because remember, what the United States or what white Americans is going through right now is what black people had already endured before. And this explains why their population is deteriorating so much faster. I'm not going to go into biology, right? But I'm going to be arguing in a structural system. Remember, they had all these advantages that black people did not have. Get to understand that. Now, when they had all these advantages, black people didn't have these advantages. Black people learned to survive without these advantages, these structural advantages that they had. And they had to learn to survive with little, right? So as time went by, white people started experiencing the problems that were not there before. The safety nets that covered them were now not there. And so this means that this had a hit on what they consume. And this really affected their population. And now I hope you understand how this works. And so I want to also note an important point that migration patterns are another powerful demographic force that we need to talk about. Western countries historically maintained white majority through tight migration control and racial exclusion. However, in the last 60 years, immigration patterns shifted dramatically, with millions of people from Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean moving into Europe and North America. And what did they do? These populations tend to be younger, have higher fertility rates, and grow faster. And as a result, white populations have not only slowed in growth, but are also aging rapidly. In some countries, white citizens are now older on average than other racial groups, which accelerates their demographic decline because of an aging population produces fewer children and experiences more death than births. Another thing that I want to address also is that the fear surrounding this demographic change is not simply about numbers. It is about identity and power, because for centuries, whiteness functioned as the center of political, cultural, and economic control. As the population shrinks, many white communities interpret this shift as a loss of dominance. This anxiety fuels political movements like MAGA in the United States and far-right nationalism across Europe. The fear is not merely biological, it is psychological. It reflects concerns that world where white people are no longer the majority may also be a world where the historical advantages erode. Black and brown populations are growing faster is seen as a threat not because of biology, but because of the guilt and fear built from centuries of domination. I would like to end by saying that the decreasing white population is not a mystery. It is the predictable outcome of modernization, economic stress, changing social values, aging population, and immigration. What makes it politically explosive is the historical context. White populations were once artificially elevated by the oppressed, by the oppression of others. And now the global demographic playing field is more leveled. The decline has become a major concern, not because of white survival is a threat, no, but because of white dominance is. Now, today's world reflects a demographic balance that was once impossible during colonialism and apartheid. For Black people, this shift is not a threat. It is simply the return of global population normally. For white populations, it feels like a loss because their historical rise was built on a system that no longer exists. So brothers and sisters, please let me know what you think and feel about this video. And as you know, I'm your host and presenter G-Talk Stories, but until then, I'm hoping to see you on my next video. Peace, love, and harmony. Salute.